Hello and welcome back to the Starting 5 video series. I'm Adam Spencer. You can find me on Twitter at AdamSpencer4 and at SDS Basketball. Today we're going to be talking about coaches who are going to enter next season on the hot seat. I don't think that there are going to be any SEC men's basketball coaches fired this offseason, although a couple are in a little bit of a tricky spot. But next offseason, we could see a few coaches moving on or changing jobs or getting fired. So in today's video, we're going to break down the 5 SEC coaches on the hottest seats entering the 2021-22 season. Starting with number 5. Rick Barnes at Tennessee. Now I know what you're thinking. He's done a great job, hasn't he? He's taken Tennessee back to national relevance. And yeah, he has. He had those Admiral Schofield and Grant Williams years that were really good, but the Vols also failed to live up to expectations a little bit. They only made it to the second round in 2018 and only made it to the Sweet 16 in 2019. Now that's nothing to sneer at, but those were teams that had much higher expectations than the Sweet 16. Then this year, he did a good job with the 5-star freshmen in Keon Johnson and Jaden Springer, but John Fulkerson, Yves Pons, Victor Bailey Jr., they all took steps back. It was tough to watch at times with the offensive struggles that went on Rocky Top, and the defense, it was still good, but it wasn't enough to get them past even the first round of the NCAA tournament, and they couldn't get past the semifinals of the SEC tournament. Yes, they have another 5-star guy coming in Kennedy Chandler this coming season, but if he's a one-and-done guy, I don't think that there's going to be a lot for him to work with on this roster. I think Fulkerson and Pons are gone to the NBA. I think Keon Johnson and Jaden Springer are gone. It's going to be interesting to see what talent is there to work with Kennedy Chandler, the 5-star freshman, next year. So if this Tennessee team fails to live up to expectations next year, this is an administration that has gone through 4 ADs since Barnes was hired in 2015. Let me say that again. This is an administration that has gone through 4 athletic directors since 2015. No one there has any loyalty to Rick Barnes. Rick Barnes doesn't have any loyalty to them either. So it's also possible that Barnes decides to move on. He might not get fired, but he might decide, hey, it's time for me to take my talents elsewhere. So for those reasons, he's number 5 on the list. At number 4, we have Ben Howland at Mississippi State. In his entire tenure in Starkville, he's only made it to 1 NCAA tournament, losing in the first round. In his 6 years in Starkville, he has turned the Bulldogs into a talented team, and they do play well, but he hasn't had the postseason success. He doesn't have any trophies, and this is a team that can and should, under his tenure, by this time be making the NCAA tournament more frequently. Now, the question becomes, does Mississippi State care enough about men's basketball to make a change? I think that they're content with where Howland has them. So if he wasn't at Mississippi State, if he was at a more basketball-hungry school, he'd be way higher on this list. But for now, since he's at Mississippi State, 4 on the list. I do think, though, that he needs to make the tournament next year to really solidify his spot in Starkville. At number 3 on the list, we have Frank Martin at South Carolina. I think that a lot of people would have him a lot higher, but hey, he just made the Final Four at South Carolina back in 2017. He's not Dawn Staley. This isn't the women's basketball team. This is men's basketball at South Carolina, and he took them to the Final Four in 2017. So I still think he has some goodwill there, but I will read you his records for the 4 seasons since then. In 2018, he went 17-16, 2019, 16-16. Last year in 2020, he went 18-13, and this past season, an abysmal 6-14. But the Gamecocks were hurt by COVID-19 more than a lot of other programs this side of Texas A&M in the SEC. I think he gets through next season without being fired, but if the struggles continue in 2022-23, then we'll have an issue with the Gamecocks looking potentially to move on from Frank Martin, or Frank Martin deciding to hang up his whistle and quit coaching altogether. I don't think that last thing will happen. I think he's still got a lot of coaching left in him if he wants to, but the pressure is starting to mount at South Carolina. I just think it'll take another full season before he's truly on the hot seat. In the number 2 spot, we have the other Martin in the SEC, Konzo at Mizzou. The Mizzou fan base is really interesting. There are basically 2 camps. One camp thinks that Martin should be gone this offseason. The other thinks that Martin has the team going in the right direction and should stay forever. The actual situation in Columbia is probably somewhere in the middle. I think that Martin makes it through this offseason without being fired, but if he fails to live up to expectations next year, say if the Tigers don't make the tournament or at least win a couple games in the SEC tournament, Mizzou is a school that should be in the Sweet 16 every now and then, the round of 32 more often than not, and always making the NCAA tournament. There's no reason the Tigers can't be a perennial NCAA tournament team. Is Konzo the guy? I don't know. He's shown that he can recruit. He's good at playing the transfer portal. Drew Smith came from the transfer portal. But with Xavier Pinson leaving this offseason, Jeremiah Tillman, and some potential other transfers, this team doesn't look like it has much in the cupboard for next year beyond Kobe Brown and potentially Mark Smith, if Mark Smith gets it together again like he had it together in non-conference play. So Konzo will be under a lot of pressure to play the transfer portal right this offseason. If he does, maybe the Tigers are competitive again next year. But if he doesn't land a couple of key guys from the portal, this thing could get ugly in a hurry, and that's why he's number 2 on this list. And that brings us to the number 1 spot, and I know Florida fans are nodding along with me and agreeing with me. Mike White, Florida, he's number 1 on the list. Now some of you are probably thinking, wait, how can a guy who made the last 4 NCAA tournaments, making the Elite 8 once and never losing in round 1, how can he be on the hot seat? Well, this is a Florida team that expects more. I mean, Billy Donovan had this team at the top of the college basketball world, winning 2 titles. Under Mike White, there's no trophies. He hasn't won a regular season title in the SEC, he hasn't won an SEC tournament title, and he hasn't made a Final Four. So there's a lot of pressure to do that at Florida. Florida is a school that cares about basketball more than a lot of others in the SEC. After failing to advance past 15 seed Oral Roberts is a tough team, don't get me wrong, but Florida should have been able to make the Sweet 16 with that draw, and they didn't, and that's on Mike White. This has been a team the past couple years that anytime they've built some positive momentum, they just shoot themselves in the foot, and that's unacceptable. That's not where Billy Donovan left this program. So if Mike White can't get the Gators back to that sort of level where they're competing for the Final Four, that's the expectation at Florida. Fair or not, that's the expectation. Mike White hasn't lived up to that. If he can't find a way to replace Trey Mann and get some more talent in there, then this is going to get ugly in a hurry in 2021-22. And I think for that reason, White is on the hottest seat in the SEC. It's win or leave town for Mike White in this upcoming SEC basketball season.